For my generation, for Generation X and for the millennial generation, well, at least the elder millennials, being bored led to some of the most creative ideas. This is how you came up with, okay, well, remember that spot in the woods we saw? That would be a great place to build a fort. My friends and I would literally find a really great spot in the woods, and then we would gather up materials, very much like the movie Sandlot. I'm not sure if you've ever seen Sandlot, where you make this structure, you know, but you build it with your friends and you have your comic books and it's like a little place you hang out. Or you would do it in your friends' backyards, or some friends' parents, depending. Our friends also had, not only they had lived on farms and they lived on acreages, but some of my friends' parents actually, I remember my buddy Brett's dad built a tree house. Like, these are real things that happen, and you'd go hang out in the tree house and you would do whatever, read comic books. We didn't have video games, right? So you would have to entertain yourself. But also, this is where you would find yourself going to, you know, we would roam the neighborhood, but we'd, you know, bring a basketball or bring a football, or we'd go to a place called Mount Pleasant and just roam around there looking for gophers and just for anything, really. Just roam aimlessly. The beautiful thing about being bored was, and the great thing about it was, it's very relaxing to be bored. Nowadays, people are so scared to be not entertained or to be bored that they're constantly scrolling, right? People are constantly scrolling on their phones, and if they don't find anything interesting, they just continue to scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll until they find something that interests them. Rather than, you know, one of the things parents could do for their kids is, instead of giving them a cell phone to play with or giving them a tablet to play with, you know, maybe give them a time limit as for how long they can play on, say, their parent's cell phone. And then in their free time, you know, give them the option to learn how to play guitar, or give them, you know, let them join piano and learn how to play piano, or let them learn how to defend themselves in martial arts, or let's find a way for them to learn how to fish, or find a way for them to learn how to do something outside, you know? You find something productive, a skill that they can build by just going out and doing something. If you think about it, and I've talked about it in some of my previous videos, is the average person spends, you know, 6.5 hours a day on their cell phones. If you repurpose those 6.5 hours, whether it be for a side hustle, or if you're a younger kid learning and trying to explore what you're passionate about, this is when you're a kid, the whole point of life is really to have fun and go out and do things until you find the thing that you really love to do and you want to pursue. It's about discovery. And nowadays, kids are not even able to go out and discover who they are because they're too busy, distracted by their cell phones and distracted by social media and distracted by Instagram and all these different things. When they could be out, like I'm just out here, I'm near Cherry Beach in Toronto, but you could be, you know, kids could just be out here roaming. There's the water right over here, and it's just a beautiful little place to be. But I do think that nowadays, kids are afraid to be bored. And being bored is what led to some of the biggest, most creative events in probably most of anybody that's in Gen X, or anybody that's an elder millennial. Even some of the younger millennials will know some of the best times of their lives are spent disconnected from the cell phone and disconnected from social media. I think about back to some of the biggest parties I've ever been to when I was a kid. They were farm parties. You know, in the 80s and in the 90s, you know, kids had lots of time in their hands. So what would you do? You would build bike ramps. You know what I mean? So you'd build a bike ramp and you would be jumping off the bike ramp, and then you'd always want to make it bigger, or you'd always want to jump over something. Or if you were into skateboarding, you were trying to find the coolest skate spots. Or if you're into whatever you're into, you're always out exploring, trying to figure out how to do something different. You can see here lots of big trees around me, you know, in the background. But even that, climbing trees used to be something that we would spend a lot of time doing. It just seems like being bored, it's like the mortal sin nowadays is to be bored. And that's another thing too, is with all this instant gratification and with all the distraction, people don't have time to really be alone anymore and aren't really finding themselves exploring. The funny thing is, I'm walking through the woods right now. Now, this is for my American friends or for my American viewers. In Canada, in some provinces now, so in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, they made new laws where if you go into the woods, you'll be fined $25,000 in Nova Scotia, which is like a province is like a state. And if you go into New Brunswick, I believe they said it was like $50,000 just for walking in the woods, because they say it's been a dry season and they want to prevent this and that. But so I find it pretty crazy to see, to think that in this day and age, what I'm doing right now, walking through the woods in parts of my country, is now illegal. So you can't actually go out and have a hike. You can't go fishing in Nova Scotia. Let that register with you. And again, they say it's only until October. So I find that interesting. So in October, it's going to be fine. But we all know how that goes. So check it, Google that. If you're an American or if you're in England, Google that. Google Canada hiking fines, fishing fines, and you'll see that this is, and you'll see people on Twitter and whatnot, if you're on there, people getting $28,000 fines, etc., for doing what I'm doing here, walking in the woods. The sadness that I have is when I talk about being the last generation, to know how great it feels like to be immortally bored, is that the new generation doesn't understand why it's important to be bored, and why it's important to sometimes just do nothing. The power in doing nothing, the power in having no idea what you're going to do for the day and just kind of exploring and getting lost and letting the world kind of dictate what's going to happen. The power of exploring, the power of not knowing, right? Just putting away the phone and just rolling the dice and going outside and seeing what's up. But we might be the last generation to know what it feels like to be bored. So I encourage all the parents out there, challenge your kids to boredom. What are we going to do today? Who knows? Well, I know what you're not going to do today is you're not going to be on your tablet. You're not going to be on your cell phone. That's what I know. Here's $5 or $10, whatever the kids get nowadays. Don't go past these limits and come back later on today. Come back for lunch or come back for supper. Enjoy the day, right? You just, go outside. But that is exactly what we're doing. I think that's what kids and people are missing nowadays is the act of being bored. You tell me in the comments, what were some of the crazy adventures that you went on because you and your friends were bored sitting around doing nothing, and all of a sudden somebody's like, oh, I got an idea. Let's do this. And next thing you know, you went on one of the most epic adventures of your life. Because that's how it always begins. That's how all great adventures begin for the most part, is like, remember? Oh yeah, let's go over to this. For us, there was 3 elementary schools in the area. Well, let's go over to Pawson. So we go over to Pawson and we say, let's see if we see any kids in Pawson. And then, you'd bump in, some kids be playing on the jungle gym. Next thing you're hanging out with them. And now you now you have a few more people to your crew. And now they're like, well, we're going to go do this thing. And then all of a sudden, okay, well, let's go with these kids. Let's go do this thing. And next thing you know, you start meeting a whole bunch of other people. And now all of a sudden you're doing something you never ever thought you were going to do. And you're making new friends. And now all of a sudden, your summer starts to become even better, because now it's like, oh, okay, now I don't have just these 2-3 friends. Now I got my friends from Pawson. Now I got my friends from St. Gregory, which was another elementary school near us. But that's how you went out and made friends back in the day, was just exploring and seeing what people were doing and just trying to join in. And nowadays, that's not what what kids are doing. Nowadays, kids make friends online, and as if that's the same thing, not realizing that the whole point of growing up and making friends and how you make lifelong friends is through shared experience. Through being there when you get in your first fist fight together, through being there when, you know, your buddy meets the girl of his dreams, or your first high school dance, or playing hockey together, or playing sports together, you know, winning together and losing together. Stuff like that. Just the natural ups and ebbs and flows of growing up and you know, learning what happens in life, you know. Usually you learn that from being with your friends. Think about how many friends anybody out there in England or in America or in Canada, you know, England, how many friends do you make playing, you know, European football? And in America, how many friends did you make playing baseball or playing American football? Canada, how many friends you make that are lifelong friends that you made playing hockey or playing some sort of high school or sports together, or volleyball together, or whatever, basketball together? How many people know what it feels like to have an epic defeat, where you and your friends or your team, the people that you played with, put your heart and soul into something and lost, and you all felt that defeat together. And then the next year you came back and you were more determined than ever, and you know what it takes to win, and you know you got to put a little bit more into it because there was more. Maybe you left something in the tank, and then all of a sudden now you know what it feels like to be victorious together. Growing up and going outside and being bored and doing things leads to these different types of experiences. These shared experiences, which helps prepare you for a future. It helps make you resilient for the future. And this is one of the most important things, other than also learning how to talk to people and learning how to cooperate and get along with people. A big part of growing up is also learning how to, you know, cooperate with people and get along with people. For the most part, what you learn in elementary school, what you learn in high school, is that the lone wolf strategy never works. You're always better off having a crew, or you're always better off trying to find and make friends that you can have shared experiences with. This is the most important thing. One of the most important things is you learn in life, especially coming up and growing up, is the importance you learn of having a crew or having friends. One of the most important things in life you learn, especially from going out and especially from shared experience, especially from being bored together, is because when you're bored together, that's how you end up finding, you know, how do you think these super famous bands got together? They were sitting around being bored, doing nothing, maybe having a couple beers or whatever, sitting around doing, and all of a sudden, bam, there they are. They're like, well, man, maybe we should start a band. And then bang, there you are, starting a band, right? Boredom, being bored together, leads to adventures, and then adventures leads to shared experience, and shared experience leads to long-term friends, leads to lifelong friends. Anybody out there that's got, you know, tell me if I'm wrong here. Do you miss being bored? Do you miss having privacy? That was the other thing, is a big part of growing up and being bored was also you couldn't be interrupted. Basically, when you were working, when you're doing something with your friends, you're completely focused because you really weren't interrupted. You were literally just focusing in on what you were doing at that particular moment. And that kind of became the entirety of what you were doing. And by learning how to focus and learning how to cooperate and work on building things together and doing things together, these are experiences and these are things that follow you for the rest of your life. And I think that one of the big issues with kids nowadays is they're being isolated. That by being on the phone all the time, or by being in the room, or playing video games, or being constantly distracted, kids are being isolated. And when you're isolated, it's much easier to control you. Whereas when you have friends that you trust and you can have honest conversations with, then it's much harder for people to control you when you're out talking with your friends, people that you trust, where you can honestly express yourself. Most people just want to, most people probably don't realize that by not spending time with people, and by not spending time with your friends, and by not making genuine connections, authentic friendships, you stop learning how to trust people. Because when you have friends and when you're growing up, you learn about trust, and you learn about betrayal, and you learn about people's good qualities and their bad qualities. But if you're not out there dealing with groups of people, and if you weren't doing that as a kid, and the first time you start to experience it is when you turn 18 or 19 or 20, you start getting into the corporate world, I guarantee you, you're in big trouble, because those people that have lived before you are going to know how to handle you very easily. So I just think a lot of these natural skills that come from hanging around and doing things with your friends and really not having any goal in mind has led to so many different things. It just leads to creative thinking. It leads to problem solving, because you have to start figuring out things for yourself. If you're out with your buddy, you're pretty far away, and you're on your bikes, and your buddy gets a flat tire, then you got to figure out, okay, how do we fix this tire? Is it, we're in a nice neighborhood, or is there any, do we need to get to a pay phone back in the day and call our parents, or is there a bike repair shop around here? Whatever the case may be. Do you have any money, Or do we just have to, just basically walk our bikes together? But these are things that would happen. And when you get stuck doing something in different situations with people, you learn that problem solving skill. You learn how to deal with bullies. You learn how to deal with adults. You learn how to negotiate, even by collecting comic books or collecting hockey cards or soccer cards or football cards, whatever. And you're trading the cards with your friends. And I know some people, they collect like Pokemon cards or Magic the Gathering cards, which wasn't something I was into. But whatever, you are who you are. But you would learn commerce. You would learn how to trade cards, and you would learn how to buy and sell cards. You learn the value of things, the perceived value of things. As a kid, this is all from just being bored. And then from being bored, you start to determine and you figure out what kind of hobby you want to have. Like for me, I wanted to learn how to play guitar. I wanted to learn how to, mainly my number one thing was learn how to play guitar. So I would spend a lot of my free time just playing guitar every chance I got. But I also like to explore. So my friends and I always find reasons to go out with my friends and do different things and find different places. But you'll find that boredom leads you to some of the skills that you never forget in life. Like even through being bored through the 2020, I started painting back then. And I started when I was, I really started, and I really loved to read. So as I was reading a lot, I determined that I was going to write some books. So I ended up writing 3 books as well. But this is all from boredom. From being bored, I started to read a lot, and then from reading a lot, and in particular, I was reading a lot of Charles Bukowski, and I'm like, oh, I could write like that. And he inspired me. And then I said, I'm going to write my own books. So then I wrote 3 books, and I wrote, the first book's called Drag City, the second book's called The Degenerate, and the third book's called In Spite of My Generation. You can Google them, you can find them if you want to find them. I'm trying to work on getting my Amazon or getting an account of some sort up, so if anybody wants to buy them, they can. It's not up yet, I'm still applying for things. But that's boredom. Boredom is your best friend. Boredom is what help people find who they are. It helps people find their passion in life, helps people find answers to questions they've been thinking about. Boredom. So if you're ever, that's what a lot of people don't understand is, if you ever have a big problem and you're sitting there, you're worried about something, the best way to solve it isn't to sit there and think about it all the time. The best way is just to go out and maybe go for a walk in nature, or just relax and do nothing and shut off the whole world and be in silence for a bit and don't think about it. And then at your most relaxed moment is when the solution will come to you. And this is all from being bored and being alone and being relaxed. And I do think that people need to get out in nature a lot more, because because it's beautiful. And also it helps relax you and helps bring you back to earth and helps to remind you that there's so much more than just this digital world. There is a whole other world out there that people aren't even exploring anymore and aren't connected to anymore. And feel, quite frankly, the biggest disconnection that's happening with all these, with the digital world and with social media and with kids being afraid, kids having to be distracted all the time, is the fact that they can't come out here in nature and enjoy this. The disconnection between humanity and nature. And I just think that it's important for kids and for adults and for anybody to spend as much time outside as they can and to encourage that. And also the power of being bored, man. There's nothing wrong with being bored. Think about it. Being immortally bored is the greatest thing in the world. So embrace your boredom. And we might be the last generation to understand and know why boredom and what boredom leads to and why that's important. We might be the last generation to know why being bored matters, why being bored leads to some of the most creative moments you'll ever have in your life, why it helps you find yourself, find who you are. This is what I know boredom brings. Boredom brings self-reflection. Boredom brings thought-provoking questions and answers to you. This is one of the most important things you're ever going to learn, is that boredom is a gift, whether you know it or not. So let me know, anybody out there, what were some of the wildest things that your boredom led you to do? How many people out there, how many of you found what you were passionate about in life because you were bored one day and you just decided that you were going to try something different, and it ended up leading to something that you continue to do to this day? Some people probably find their livelihoods off of it. Let me know. All right? I'm Matt Ross. I'm the Lone Wolf.